Hi, in this video I will talk about EPSP and mEPSP. So EPSP stands for Excitatory Postsynaptic Potential and mEPSP stands for Miniature Excitatory Postsynaptic Potential. So as we can understand from the name that both of the terms suggest some postsynaptic activity. Now let us try to understand using a neuronal diagram. So here is a neuron and there are at least 4 input in this neuron, and we focus on the input A. And in this setup we can stimulate the presynapse, the neuron in yellow, and we can record from the postsynapse, the neuron in blue. Now once we inject a current in the presynapse, we see in the postsynaptic neuron there is a change in potential, and it is in order of several 40 to 50 millivolts, and this change in potential is known as postsynaptic potential. And this kind of postsynaptic potential has been seen that it can give rise to postsynaptic spikes or postsynaptic action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. So that's why it is known as excitatory postsynaptic potential, because it can give rise to action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. Now, what happens when a presynaptic stimulation occurs? There are the presynaptic action potential reaches a synaptic terminal and it releases neurotransmitter, and the neurotransmitter binds to the postsynaptic ligand-gated channels and allows cation influx. This cation influx makes the postsynaptic membrane more positive and thereby a voltage change, and that voltage change is recorded as a postsynaptic potential in order of several millivolts. Now here are a few properties of the EPSP. Now excitatory postsynaptic potential might give rise to action potential in the postsynapse. It depends upon the EPSP strength whether it can give rise to action potential or not, which I will be discussing shortly. Now the change in potential is caused due to ion influx through ligand-gated ion channels. And also EPSPs are graded potential. So it doesn't have a fixed value. It is not a all or none phenomena. So its value could be graded. That means depending upon the stimulus strength, the values or the change in potential could be different. So that is why it is known as graded potential. So now, what is actually downstream to EPSP? So what happens after EPSP? So when we stimulate the presynapse, we see an excitatory postsynaptic potential in the synapse, and that depolarization wave which is generated in the postsynapse would actually flow down towards the axonal initiation segment. There it can give rise to action potential if the stimulus is strong enough, or it might not give action potential if the stimulus is weak. For example, in this case, the stimulus is not strong enough to elicit action potential. Whereas when we inject a higher current pulse, depicted here by the broken lines, which is bigger, which elicited a bigger response in the postsynaptic neuron, and it gives rise to action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. Now instead of giving a strong current pulse, if we give multiple weak current pulse, then also there is a probability that action potential could be generated, because EPSPs can add up one on another, and that could lead the neuron to fire an action potential. Small amount of voltage change could be additive, and it would make the membrane potential towards more positive side, more depolarizing side, and once it crossed the voltage threshold, it would fire an action potential. So EPSP can give rise to action potential depending upon the strength, or even if weak stimulus are there, depending upon the time course of the stimulus, it can give rise to action potential or not. Now, apart from EPSP, another type of potential could be recorded from the neuron. Let's say this neuron is not stimulated. We are not using any stimulating electrode to stimulate this blue neuron, and we put a sodium channel antagonist known as TTX to block the spike. So the spontaneous activity of the blue neuron is gone, and as well as we are not stimulating it. In this situation, if we record from the postsynapse, it has been seen that still there are small amount of responses in order of 1 millivolt could be recorded, and these are known as miniature excitatory postsynaptic potential. In 1952, Bernard Kurtz first seen this phenomena and named these things as mEPSP, or simply the minis. Now, what are actually minis? Minis or mEPSP is actually due to spontaneous release of the neurotransmitter vesicles. And when we are talking about mEPSP, one important term is quantal size. Quantal size means the response elicited by the content of one quanta. In very simple words, quantal size means response elicited by the content of one neurotransmitter mediated vesicles. So let's say one neurotransmitter mediated vesicle is released, and that gives rise to a small change. That is actually mEPSP. An increase in quantal size would simply mean more neurotransmitter is inside the vesicle or more receptor in the postsynapse, both of which can increase the amplitude of mEPSP. Now, what is the relation between mEPSP and EPSP? So people think that EPSP is actually sum of multiple mEPSP, and this hypothesis is known as quantal hypothesis, as proposed by Bernard Kurtz in 1952. So where he proposed that neurotransmitters are released in form of small packets, and the small packets actually one of the small packets would give rise to mEPSP, and it as a whole release of all the neurotransmitter when an action potential reaches the nerve terminal would give rise to EPSP. Now mEPSP is due to spontaneous release, whereas EPSP is due to evoked release. When a stimulus comes, then only EPSP kind of phenomena happens, or otherwise there is a spontaneous release, and the readout for spontaneous release is mEPSP. I hope you like this video. I would talk about spontaneous release and evoked release in detail in my subsequent videos. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.